your thoughts on some news as we move to New York, and the Knicks are set to hire former sharpshooter Jeff Hornacek. Why do you think Hornacek was Phil Jackson's pick, Ben?
Well, I think he's got a lot going for him. He's clearly a very bright mind. He had real quick success in Phoenix in his first year right out of the gate. Clearly, that's something the Knicks fans are dying for. I mean, they don't want this to be a big rebuilding process. They want to get back in the playoffs as soon as possible. He's a competitive, fiery guy. He's a lifer from a basketball standpoint. Phil Jackson can kind of relate to that. And these are guys who, they go back at least to the 1997 finals when the Bulls and Jazz were squaring off. So I think that's what you like about Hornacek, but there's big questions. I mean, philosophy-wise, what's going to happen with the triangle? And then also, if they ditch the triangle and they go with Hornacek's approach, does that up-tempo, three-point heavy style really fit the kinds of pieces that New York has in place? I'm not sure it does. I mean, Melo's played kind of a slow style throughout his career. To me, Porzingis is not necessarily a guy who's going to run up and down the court. So I think what we're going to have to see from Hornacek is really some adaptability in how he approaches things strategically.
All right, very interesting. Of course, we know, speaking of that triangle, apparently former Knicks coach Jeff Van Gundy has some inside information. He said that Phil is not going to require Hornacek to run the triangle. I mean, that's a stark contrast from what we've been hearing throughout the process. What changed, Ben?
Well, I mean, if you're not coming up with that style, it's hard to just learn that on the fly if you're a coach. I mean, maybe you can introduce some principles, but, he's going to have to be his own guy. And I think ultimately that's what's surprising about this hire is that Phil didn't go the nepotism route, which I think a lot of people expected. He didn't go even to his own coaching tree, with some of the candidates who were available out there. He went a different direction, and I think that shows a certain open-mindedness from Phil Jackson that a lot of Knicks fans were seeking. That's good, and maybe he's finally willing to realize that the triangle offense, the kinds of shots it generates, the type of space that it occupies, just doesn't really align that closely with sort of the modern thinking of basketball in 2016. It's just a different style, a different game, and Hornacek really made good use in Phoenix of a lot of the principles that have made teams like the Warriors successful. He was really big on pushing the pace, and he was really big on trying to get three-pointers. Those are two things that all the smartest teams have been doing recently, and that's something that maybe the Knicks could stand to learn from.
Final thought for you, and Carmelo Anthony, he was on our set just a couple weeks ago, and what he said he wanted was open communication during the process of the Knicks hiring a new coach. This will be Melo's fifth coach in his sixth full season in New York. Should Melo be happy about this hire, Ben, or will he be waiving his no-trade clause and saying so long to New York?
I think it's a big open question because the number one problem that Hornacek had in Phoenix was managing egos. He just couldn't keep everybody happy. He couldn't get the ball to all the guys who wanted the ball. And we know how Melo feels about that. He wants his shots. He wants his touches. That's been the case his entire career. And we also know that he's been a fairly stubborn guy who's gone through some issues with coaches where they saw things differently, and those coaches ultimately hit the road, right? So I think if you're Carmelo Anthony, you're probably glad that you've got a coach who at least has a decent track record as a head coach. He's a fiery, competitive guy. I'm sure they can see eye to eye on that. And also, I think Hornacek's a pretty good communicator, and so certainly he's going to have a vision he can sell to Carmelo. But ultimately, it comes down to winning, and it comes down to can he keep Carmelo happy in a system that works for Carmelo, and does it jive with the kind of style he wants to play? And to me, those are open questions, and I think the trade rumor stuff with Carmelo Anthony is just going to continue here going forward.